What is a domain controller? Before we get into the domain controller, let's find out what is a domain. A domain is an area of territory owned or controlled by a ruler or a government, right? This is how we know that people when say, I am the man of my domain, right? So I'm a king of my kingdom. So basically, a domain controller could be referred as a kingdom of resources. That's how a domain controller is. A domain controller controls major group services such as user activation service, which is the Active Directory services, a DNS, domain name services, print services, file system replication, Windows time service, DHCP, and many other services. They are all under the control of your domain controller. So in a corporate environment, what they'll do is they will make one server, one primary server, which they call primary domain controller, as a domain controller of your environment. That is actually going to control all the computers in your environment. So every time you build a computer, you have to register your computer to the domain. Tell the domain computer, hello domain computer, sir, can you please register me with you so you could apply all your policies and all your rules and all your restrictions on my environment. That's how the domain controller works. Same thing if you are in a kingdom, in a government. They apply all the policies, all the laws, the rules and regulations, right? And you have to follow it. If you are in a country, you have to follow their rules and restrictions. You cannot do anything outside of it. Maybe one thing is illegal in one country and the same thing is legal. So it depends on which kingdom you are in. Just like that, the domain controller works the same way. A company XYZ would have a domain controller and they have their own policy, whereas company ABC would have a different way, but they all have domain controllers. So let's talk about domain controller versus the Active Directory. A domain controller is a main server that serves Active Directory. Now, I know a lot of time people do confuse domain controller with Active Directory. So please clarify this. Active Directory is not a domain controller. However, you do need a domain controller to have an Active Directory. An Active Directory is a directory service which allows user to authenticate logins to log into the clients. So all the clients you have, let's say A, B, C, D, E, these are the clients and there is a server. Every time you need to log into client A, B, C, D, E, you have to get it authenticated against the server. Let me give you an example of the US government, how it works. So people who are in United States would be easy. It will be so easier for them to understand. If you are not in the United States, but I'm sure you will know exactly what I'm talking about. So in United States government, that the whole government is like a domain controller. It has 3 different branches, and those branches can be referred as their services. One of the service is legislative service, another one is executive service, and the third one is judicial service. These are the services that are under the umbrella of US government. Underneath these services, you also have different sub-services or branches like Congress, Senate, House of Representatives. In executive, you have president, vice president, cabinet. In judicial, you have Supreme Court and other federal court. So all those branches, underneath these branches are like services or the different processes that run. But top one is always going to be the domain controller. So let me take you to our machine and I'll tell you how it works. So when you add a role or feature and you click next, leave it default. It will tell you which way we're installing. We're installing a local machine. Okay, so you see, let's say if you wanted to have Active Directory domain service, when you click on it, you see right here it's telling you this service or this role requires different service roles or different features, and those features, those tools are Active Directory Administrative Center, Active Directory Snap-in and command line tools, remote server administration, group policy management. All of these roles, this Active Directory service would need that primary role that have other services associated with it. It says you cannot install Active Directory domain services unless the following role services or features are also installed. So in other words, let's cancel it out. Let's go back to our picture, our image of U.S. government. So you cannot have a vice president without president, or you cannot have a president without a government, right? Just like that, you cannot have a Congress without legislative, or legislative cannot exist without a government. That's why there is a dependencies. So I hope you understand the difference between the domain controller and its services.